Hi everyone, I'm Tony, the Geeky Agent from Remax, and of course I would do a video today, the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, the original television series starring William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy as James T. Kirk and Mr. Spock. It's a version of Star Trek that probably the most people are familiar with, the one that, the Trekkies go to the conventions and put their pointy ears on and all that kind of stuff. That's probably what most people are familiar with, even though there have been a number of series since then, like Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, and a bunch of movies and new and old and all this kind of stuff. The most recent just being released a few weeks ago, almost about a month ago, to audiences around the world. And it's one of those series that just has a great impact on our society, even though it was really short-lived. And most people look back on it now and think it was pretty cheesy, me included, even though I love it. But I guess my greatest thing that I took from Star Trek was this idea of to boldly go where no one has gone before. I mean, I think there are two really big things that have influenced me in my life, and strangely enough, they come from geek culture. Surprise. One of them was Spider-Man, and the phrase at the end of the first issue of Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy number 15 that says, "With great power must also come great responsibility." Those are heavy words for a 15-cent comic book, but it's greatly impacted me in the way I live my life. And the other was Star Trek. I mean, at the end of Star Trek, you hear the theme song, and you hear the words spoken by William Shatner originally about
its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
The original theme, that idea of boldly going beyond your own barriers, about exploration, about continuous learning throughout your life. The fact that you had a science officer standing on the bridge in the character of Mr. Spock, that you had a communications officer that was really involved in the character of Lieutenant Uhura, played by Nichelle Nichols. And just the cast itself was just, to me as a young kid, it really influenced me to see, stereotypically as it was in some cases, a black woman in Nichelle Nichols, an Asian American in Captain Sulu, a Russian in Chekhov, ultimately Canadian but supposedly American character in William Shatner, and Mr. Spock, who was completely alien to all of them. Just to see the play, and Scotty, of course, in the transporter room with the Scottish accent. Just to see the interplay of all these characters, and then to bring in all these alien cultures, and to demonstrate that it wasn't all about conquering. It wasn't about going out and conflict and taking over planets. It was about exploration. It was about going out there and building bridges, about learning, about finding out how to establish communication with these races and different cultures and alien worlds, and just learning and trying to expand the reach of your knowledge. Those kind of ideas, I think, are more important now than they ever have been, really, in our world, where we're faced with conflicts and clashes of cultures, and a lot of rhetoric around fear of what is unknown, fear of immigrants, fear of people who are different than you. That story has been around forever. I mean, I can talk about hearing stories from my own father as an Italian immigrant here in the 60s and 70s in Canada, not being able to walk down the street that was filled with predominantly Italian shops and restaurants, but still having the local native Canadian people, and I don't mean Aboriginals, I mean the people who were born here in Canada, throw a number of disparaging names and remarks to him as he walked down the street, which I will not repeat here, and telling him basically to go home, even though he came here to make it his home, and to make it a home for me and my brothers and our family, extended family since then. I think those ideas of just trying to learn about each other and building bridges to each other, like I say, apply more now than they ever have before. And it frightens and saddens me to think that we're going in the opposite direction. I don't think that's what this country was established for. I don't think that's what we established civilization for. That's just my opinion, little guy from the North End, so take it for what it's worth. But that's what I got from Star Trek, and that's what I get from a lot of geek culture. It seems to be the more accepting of all the different little cultures and out there, if you want to call them that, little pop culture type things out there. When I go to comic conventions and that, it's it gets weird. Don't get me wrong, it gets pretty weird, but in general, it's a fairly accepting culture, and it's a place where people can express themselves freely and really just enjoy their lives and do things that they find to be fun and not have to apologize for it. That's what I get out of geek culture. That's what I get out of Star Trek. That's what I get out of Spider-Man, and that's kind of the way I hope. I try my best to live my life that way. I hope you do too. I hope you have a great Star Trek day. Be out there, put on some pointy ears, do something fun. Visit your local comic shop, pick up a Star Trek comic, jump on Netflix, watch some old episodes or some old movies. Let me know what you think. What's your favorite Star Trek episode if you ever saw one? My favorite Star Trek movie is still Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Just is. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other great things there. City on the Edge of Forever is fantastic as well. But that's my all-time sort of touchstone with Star Trek. The first Star Trek movie that I saw in a theater, so I just loved it to death, and that's where I'm at. And I hope you all have something like Star Trek in your life that inspires you, whether it's real, whether it's fictional, whether it's people in your lives, whether it's stories that you've heard, that just inspire you to be better, inspire you to expand beyond the little bubble that is your day-to-day life, that inspires you to build bridges with other people and understand them rather than to be afraid of them and to push them away. That's the best thing I think anybody can take away from this. I'm going to go chill out later today. I do have some real estate work to do, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to go present an offer a little bit later today and talk to a bunch of clients for the rest of today. But later this evening, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'll be sitting in front of the TV on Netflix watching some old Star Trek episodes and maybe even a movie while we just chill out at the end of the day. I hope you do too. For Leonard, I'll say this to you. Live long and prosper.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.